series of welcome to the third in our series of 3 workplace wellness webinars, and I'm especially looking forward to a conversation with Natalie and Paul again today. As always, CAS asks for CAS members to be the ones to learn with and from, and we're going to continue with that, of course, today. So welcome to Natalie and Paul again. And also I'll start with a quick thank you to Val and Claudine and Brian for their work throughout the workplace wellness process, and Val and Claudine especially on these webinars. So thanks to you folks. And we'll now move to the acknowledgement of the land. I acknowledge that I am on Treaty 7 territory, the traditional territories and oral practices of the Blackfoot Nations, which includes the Siksika, Piikani, and Kainai. I also acknowledge that Tsuut'ina and the Stoney Nakoda First Nations and the traditional homeland of the Métis and all the peoples who make their home in the Treaty 7 regions of Southern Alberta. I am aware and I honor that some participants are joining us from other treaty areas in Alberta and Canada. We at CAS commit to restoring and honoring the truth and reconciliation calls to action. We strongly believe that truth must be acknowledged to move forward to reconciliation. Together, we call upon all of our collective communities to build a stronger understanding of all peoples who dwell on this land we call home. So welcome again, and the learning outcome, as you can see on your screen now, of course, we all hope that you will be able to come away from these webinars with your workplace wellness planning process firmly underway, if not completed, or in some cases altered based on the webinars, but that is clearly the purpose of the series of webinars that we have. So following along with the guide that is available on the CAS website, along with many other resources, we know that we can streamline the workplace wellness planning and implementation process for you. And we'll move now to slide 4.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Brian Angelic. We'd really like to start by thanking our presenters for the first 2 sessions that CAS has offered related to workplace wellness and planning and implementation. They provided us, for those of you who were not able to attend, a great summary of related to the 5 W's of workplace wellness planning and implementation from their school authorities. CAS members have always suggested that they enjoy learning from others, learning with each other throughout the province, and certainly those first 2 sessions provided that type of opportunity as well. And again, we'd like to make sure that you're aware that CAS will offer learning guides for each of the sessions, and in fact, the first one is already done, and it's in the resources bank is indicated in the chat line. Thanks for doing that, Claudine. And CAS will develop learning guides as well for sessions 2 and 3. There's so much value in these sessions in terms of getting some quick traction and confidence moving forward with workplace wellness planning and implementation. And I really look forward to learning more about some of the measurement systems that a couple of our school authorities in Alberta here have put into place while they're implementing workplace wellness and their planning as well. So thanks to the presenters for today and the presenters in the past who have made a big difference to their colleagues in Alberta.
Thank you, Brian. David.
Good morning, everyone. And one of the things that's very nice in the graphics that describe our practices and our intents moving forward is the embeddedness of wellness. as an overarching guide. You'll see that graphic on the left, of course, demonstrates the relationship between the teaching quality standard, leadership quality standard, and superintendent leadership quality standard. We always have to remember that wellness is at the heart of being successful in any standard for any employee in any context. And of course, when we look at workplace wellness, it's always a both and experience. We look at evidence, we look at roles and responsibilities. There is a systemic approach that we can undertake, hence the presentations this morning. We want to make it integrated into the workplace of people. And of course, it's a shared commitment. We ultimately become the experts in wellness because we have to understand how it impacts us. And by sharing in that vision, it's the best possible way of understanding that wellness will be at the forefront of making us as effective as we can be. So with that, I'll pass this back to you, Jim.
Thank you, David. So if we move now to the next scroll, you've got it there, Val, thank you. So you were sent an email that included this sheet for you to work on. And if you have had a chance to have a look at that, it allows you to look at what resonates with respect to your work on wellness and the measures associated with your wellness work. And we'll explore that further in the breakout room time, of course. But that is the form that you were sent. And if you didn't get a chance to see it prior to, you won't have a chance to have a peek during the breakouts. And hopefully you'll be able to choose measures that are doable and meaningful and based on having a comprehensive and integrated workplace wellness plan. So that'd be following along with our guide and the playbook and the other resources that are available on the CAS website. And we'll move now to our first presentation. As Brian mentioned, so thankful to the folks that have presented so far in our first two webinars. Just amazing presentations, and we're looking forward to more of the same from Natalie Morris from the Foothills School Division. Natalie, welcome.
Good morning, everyone. And again, thank you so much for joining us. It definitely does feel like a Monday morning after a long weekend, not a Tuesday morning. So I know that it takes a little bit of extra whatever to get through being here, but I definitely am very grateful. So thank you very much. I'm joining you from the banks of the mighty Peace River here in Fort Vermilion. I'm on Treaty 8 territory, so the home of Deneta, Beaver, Cree, and the Métis. So thank you so much for having us. And if you haven't had a chance to be up in the Fort Vermilion area, don't mistake it with Vermilion. This is Fort Vermilion, so two very different ends of our beautiful province. And we've had some gorgeous weather this weekend. So thank you, everyone. Okay, I'm going to dive right into our why, because like all of you that are joining us, that really is your starting point for moving forward. It's your driving factor. So why is it that you need to make change, or why is it that we need to have a focus on wellness? And for us, it really was looking at our staff and our students. So for our staff absenteeism, it was growing at an annual rate of 20%. So a lot of staff were needing to take a ton of time off. Because we live in the north, if you have a medical appointment for yourself or a loved one, it requires a ton of travel. So we definitely were thinking about that as we were, starting to make plans for changes. How can is there something that we can do to offer to kind of appeasate the people that need to be leaving often, and really focusing on looking at all of our systemic needs and what can we tackle with the greatest impact and whatever's within our control, right? We also had a number of certified teachers that chose to leave after completing their 2 years. As much as I love the North and I love being here, I was born and raised, not everybody loves the North the way that I do. And I can't control that. We can't control that as a district level, but we can definitely try to make it as lovely and as healthy as possible for our staff while they're with us. There was also like a disconnection between staff and system leadership. And we know that in order to really be motivated to do really good work, we need to understand the why behind movements. And so we've kind of changed our process in terms of a system to be as transparent as possible. So when we're asking our staff to do something, we recognize it needs to be transparent. I have a little toddler in my life. He's my best friend's little guy. And every single statement is followed with why. And I think that's a really good reminder for us that when we're working with people, regardless of their age, students or staff, they're asking that. And they might not be asking it verbally, but like they definitely, their nonverbals are saying, why am I doing this? Why? And I guess sometimes they do ask verbally. And then of course, our students, we were seeing deplorable rates in terms of suspension and expulsion rates across the district. We have, just to kind of give you a sense of our size, we're a jurisdiction that has a huge geographic area. I think Mike McMahon likes to refer to it as, the same span of New Brunswick. Like it's like a huge area. We have 16 schools within the jurisdiction, and very, very diverse demographic of students. We have about 30, well, I don't want to use this year's student numbers. I'll go with pre-COVID student numbers, about 3,500 students in the jurisdiction. And we were sitting at an average of about anywhere from 80 to 100 suspensions annually. So we knew that we had to do something different in terms of the approach for our students and making sure that they were healthy and well when they were in our buildings. And then we also had a pretty stagnant achievement. And so, going back to what Brian said in regards to wellness really is at the stem of what you do. If your students are not well and your staff are not well, then your school division does not run well, right? It really is at the stem of everything. Next slide, please. Thank you. So implementing strategic plan. And I just want to preface this by saying it needs to be a working document. You need to constantly be going back and revisiting what it is that you're doing in terms of your strategies and whether or not they're being effective. So we shot for the stars, obviously, right? We went really big, and now we're kind of at a place where we're starting to kind of hone in what's working really well, and getting lots of feedback from staff and students in that process. So we chose a wraparound approach for all of our students in the school, and that's from the Village Effect work. So Susie Pickard's work. We are part of the Carrington Connection Network. We have kind of modeled our wellness team after Jody's work in terms of my title is supervisor of connectivity. Our team is called the Connection Team, and it's composed of mental health therapists as well as coaches, and that work in our schools. And we also have a social emotional curriculum that's being taught in all classes, K-8. And the one that I chose to use was Second Step. And Second Step comes out of the United States. So it's not Canadian born and bred, but I've been incredibly impressed with the Committee for Children, which is the organization that started Second Step. and it's very well researched. It's been a social emotional curriculum that's been in place for over 20 years. So it's something that really, there's a substantial amount of research to show that it really is making an impact in the lives of students. So that's really exciting. We also really did take a whole systems approach. So the conversations at the board level, the executive level, the administrative level, and at the school level are all focused around connectivity. And I'm using connectivity because that's the term that we use as a school division. I'll say this because Mike's not on the call, but Mike doesn't like the word wellness. And so he feels like it implies that there's something wrong. There's something wrong with you. So we use the term connectivity. So just know that that's interchangeable for sure for anybody that's in on the call. And our priority around connectivity is our first priority, because we know that it's relationships, relationships, relationships first. And then the idea is that everything else then follows. If we have healthy, well adapted students, they're going to be able to focus and they're going to be able to learn, which, I mean, we're in the world of education, so that's our priority. So something that I want to point out that we've implemented, I alluded to it earlier when I talked about transparency, is I refer to it as open mic. Mike visits all of our schools. He's actually done that numerous times this year because of COVID, because things are changing at such a fast pace that we really did feel that our staff in particular and our parents needed a lot more kind of on the ground, what is happening and why is it happening. And so he'll just visit a school and there's no agenda. And he just opens it up to questions. And I think that takes a ton of bravery to do, because you never know what's coming your way. You also have to be willing to say, I don't have the answer to that. But I think what it has caused is a culture that people now will ask the tough questions instead of murmur behind closed doors and complain about things that are happening. They really do feel that they will be heard when they speak, which I think is absolutely lovely. And that whole principle is guided by Brene Brown's work. So Mike, our superintendent, got to go and spend a week, which he loves to brag about, with Brene Brown out in Texas. And he has been trained to lead Brene Brown's Dare to Lead training. So that's been offered to all of our staff throughout our jurisdiction. And he pulls it back a lot to her work. So tell me more, leaning into, really tough conversations. And so that really does kind of drive who he is as a leader and what we do as a school division. The other thing that I wanted to point out is that, our staff were leaving a lot. We can't do a ton around like the physical and medical stuff that they need to access outside of our jurisdiction. But we did have staff members say that, if they need to go see a psychologist, they're having to leave and travel out. We have a very, very underserved population, unfortunately, in terms of mental health supports. So for any of our staff that were needing to access services, they were having to travel out. So Mike contracted 2 psychologists for our school division just to focus on our staff. And so those psychologists are Dr. Fewer and Dr. Engel, and they come up pre-COVID. They would come up monthly and spend a full week doing face-to-face therapeutic sessions with our staff, and then connecting in the interim if needed. During COVID, everything has gone to a virtual platform. For clients that are okay with connecting virtually for mental health supports, that's been fine. For clients that needed that face-to-face, unfortunately, it hasn't been okay. And that's paid for by the school division. So it's $100,000 that is the best $100,000 I think we could possibly spend for our jurisdiction to support our staff in terms of their mental health and well-being. And then I just send out like a monthly little reminder email to all of our staff. These services are available. If you would like to, access your own services, you can definitely do that. These are just two that we pick up the cost. So we pay for $100, like half of the session, and then the other one is direct billed. So there's no money out of pocket. And we never know who it is that received the service. We just get billed for number of sessions from either Willard or Natasha. And then another thing in terms of staff retention that we tried to address was we put a large amount of money into supporting bursaries and scholarships to grow our own. So we have a partnership right now with the University of Calgary with their community-based Bachelor of Education program. So families can continue to remain in the North while they're receiving their Bachelor of Education degree. And that's last year we hired 11 students that graduated out of that program, and we're so very excited. We haven't seen, obviously, and I'll get to this next, we haven't seen a direct impact of that growing our own program yet, but I am very, very hopeful that that's one of those we need to wait and give it some time to see some upward trends, but I'm very, very hopeful that it will. These are 11 students that are have well-established roots in our region, that some of them were already parents and going to school with their young family at home. And so it feels like they probably will stay. And service return agreements for any staff members that are wanting to further their education as well. Okay, Val, we can go to the next one. So don't just do for the sake of doing. And I'm sure that nobody's on the call. If you're at the level of Cass, you've been a teacher, you know about formative assessment and how critical it is to do that in your classroom. And I'm sure you did that as an administrator. You were constantly assessing where you were at as a school and what needed to shift. And then now at a kind of a system level, that's still needed. So we don't just get in the grind. Well, hopefully we don't, and get on the hamster wheel and just go and go and go and go and go for the sake of going. You really need to be constantly looking back at what is it that we're doing? What's making an impact? Do I think it's making an impact just because I really love this strategy? Am I emotionally attached to it and that's why we're doing it? Or are the people who are on the ground, so to speak, that it really does need to be making an impact? Are they telling you that it's making an impact, or are they showing you? So is there some soft data or some hard data that really truly is showing you that the impact is there? And for us, our suspension and expulsion rates were just like that, kind of like, aha, yes, we are doing what we're supposed to be doing. We're making a difference. So we really kind of jumped on board and took that whole village approach. And really what that means, if you want to talk more, or if you'd like me to share more about this, I definitely can at a later date. But really, it's just about wrapping around children, and it very much like the whole village gets involved. So you would have a meeting about a student that's really, really struggling, and you would have the bus driver present and possibly the custodian if that's who the student connects with, and you would share a genogram. So this is what this child has gone through. And it's really about creating paths for empathy and compassion around each child. So we went from an average of anywhere from 80 to 100. So I think the year that I picked, it was like 86 that particular year. And then we implemented the village approach and really jumped on board in terms of the Carrington Connection Network. And we, for the 2018-2019 school year, so the year just pre-COVID, we were down to 19. So from 86 to 19, which I think is absolutely phenomenal. And we also really were hearing from staff that it was making them feel like they had a piece to play and took a lot of ownership in children's lives. when they sometimes before were feeling like it was out of their realm or out of their control. We have a huge number of staff who access our psychologists, and that grows exponentially each year. This year is really, it's tough for me to feel like I can get solid data in regards to number of sessions, because when I'm speaking to both Willard and Natasha about client needs, they're both saying, yep, there's, their clients have, number of clients has stayed the same, but it's because they're getting new clients that are okay with virtual. And unfortunately, some of their previous clients that don't feel comfortable with a virtual service have not received any service during COVID through them. They might be accessing somebody through AHS, but they're not receiving that service through Willard and Natasha. So that's disheartening for me. And, we're all really, really hopeful that we'll be able to get to a place where they'll be up north again and be able to do the face-to-face consulting. And that's just, they pick a space that's a neutral space. It's not on Fort Vermilion School Division property. And they inform all of their clients. We fly them up here. We get them a rental vehicle. They go to the location. They meet with all of their clients. It's lovely. It's absolutely lovely. In terms of data for staff retention, it really, so that the chart that I've shared with you, I pulled it right out of Scott Lees is our HR guy, and I pulled it right out of a summary that he submitted to our board at the beginning of this year. And you can see, I guess what I would like to focus on, because it's good-ish data, is the resignation. So in the school year of 2017-2018, we had 24 staff resign. And then that was the school year, of course, that we really started to focus on staff wellness, and we started to make changes. It dropped down to 15, which I think is really, really solid. And then unfortunately this year we're back up into the 20s. And so I'd love to hear from the rest of you later on when we get into the breakout rooms or Q&As, just in regards to staff retention. That might be something that's just out of our control because of living in a northern remote community. But yeah, so, and then the other thing that I wanted to point out on this specific slide is when you're thinking about impact and asking questions and really kind of assessing whether or not it's making change, you have to be willing to ask, even if you don't necessarily want to know the answer, and then lean into that response. And I think Mike has done a really good job of setting the stage for us in regards to, being really transparent in terms of processes and visiting schools and having those conversations and allowing staff and parents and community members to ask questions and not kind of go in with that pre-generated agenda. Okay, next slide, please, Val. Thank you. So this is just a quick example of how we gauge our students, and I pulled the data from our connectivity survey for our K-3. So we shoot out an electronic survey to all of our students biannually, so in the fall and then again in late spring, and then we do a comparative data analysis. So these are 4 questions for our kindergarten to grade 3. Just asking, how do you feel most days while at school learning? Adults in school who I talk to make me feel. I feel cared about. Are there other kids that, who I chat to? How do they make me feel? So just a very, very quick survey just to gauge their results. The thing that I wanted to, and we do this survey from kindergarten to grade 12. Of course, it's very few questions at the primary level, and then there's kind of some more in-depth questions at the high school level. But it's always a short survey, because whether you're in grade 1 or in grade 12, surveys get pretty tiring pretty quickly. And so, yeah, so it's very important to kind of keep them short and succinct, which I'm sure Paul's going to chat about that in terms of his surveys as well later. But the one thing I wanted to point out is all of our data is held in an application in Microsoft called Power BI, and we have numeracy data, literacy data, and connectivity survey results, and then we can pull, so we as a executive can pull data based on schools, based on classrooms, based on specific students, because it's all tied to their ASN, their Alberta student number. And schools can do that as well, as can teachers. So a teacher could pull the results from all 3 levels on a specific child to see if it's one specific area that they're really struggling in, like a priority area, or whether it's like globally there's something going on with this child, which then I would argue is it's a connection issue, but that's okay. They can then really kind of hone down. And then the other thing that we can do is I can pull out the 11 students, let's say, that are worried about the relationships that they have with other students. And I can find out exactly which school those 11 students are in, or which classes they're in, what age group they're in, to kind of like create the like honing down or figuring out some themes within the data. So if you aren't already looking at a data collection source, or if you don't already have one, those are just a couple of things that I think are really important to keep in mind in regards to collecting data, is keep it as simplistic as possible at the student level, short and succinct, and then make sure that there's a way that your staff can really use that data, because otherwise they're not going to encourage their students to complete the survey, or they're not going to put any effort in completing it because they don't see the validity in it, right? And that's a huge piece of collecting data, is that if your staff and your students, whoever your stakeholders are, if they can't see the purpose, the why behind it, then they're not going to be authentic and genuine, I don't think. Alrighty. Next one, and this is my final slide. I'm sure I've taken way too much time. My apologies. This is the needs assessment that is sent out biannually to all of our staff as well. Same idea. It's in the fall and then late spring. This information is not held in Power BI. This is just a form that I created through Microsoft. I just really wanted to kind of gauge how our staff were feeling. And then I shared key findings. So I did like a closing deadline, obviously, for the survey. We have 600 staff. I had 200 staff complete the survey, which I felt was really good, actually, because it's all voluntary. Excuse me. And then I shared the key findings back with the staff. So I said, here's three things that really jumped out in the survey, and these are the strategies that we are going to put in place to try to address those themes. It's so critical, again, to go back to, being transparent. So it's, what's our why behind what it is that we're doing, being transparent in that process. So before I sent out the survey, I just, I didn't just kind of like cold call and send it out. I sent an email that said, I'm really working on developing a really solid wellness plan for our school division, and I want you to be a part of that. I need to know how you guys are feeling. And of course, there's different themes based on different groups within our school division. So our educational assistants gave us different feedback than our teachers, than our bus drivers, but it is a whole staff approach. We don't just do things for our educators. When we're looking at needs for our staff, we're definitely looking at the needs of all of our staff together. And just being as transparent as possible. Here's what you said in the needs assessment. This is what we can do, or this is out of our control, this specific area. But here's something that you might want to try. It's difficult because sometimes you'll get really conflicting data. Like an example is I was hearing a lot of, we need additional professional development on our First Nations, Métis, and Inuit students so that we can better implement TQS number 5. But then you would have some staff members that would say there's way too much professional development. Leave us alone. So it's really like you have to definitely, and I was transparent in that when I emailed everybody back. I said, we definitely had some staff members that said there's too much professional development, but we had some staff members say we need more. So here's what we're going to do for you. It's completely optional. You can sign up if you want. Here's our plan moving forward for professional development. We hope you take advantage of it if that's an area that you felt was of need. Work-life balance. Well, if you're struggling with work-life balance, unfortunately, it means you need to do a little bit of investing some time ahead of the game in order to really make some changes in your life. And sometimes I think that's a step that's missed for people. I think people that are struggling don't want to invest any more time in getting well, but really that's a time commitment. So if getting well for you means that you need to look at your work-life balance, then you have to look at it. You have to invest the time to kind of really analyze it and look at it. I'm going to stop talking. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Natalie. As expected, an excellent presentation for us. I was very interested in your comment about revisiting strategies and their effectiveness. So that speaks to measuring and data, and also to the soft skills. I mean, I love Mike's visits to schools and the trust that develops when you're actually listening to what people have to say. And Mike is a great listener. And I know that Kurt Satcher does that in Chinook's Edge, and I'm sure many other superintendents around the province, but it's so key to people when their head person, their CEO, if you like, comes out and just sits and listens, no agenda, just talk to me about what's on your mind. So very cool connection there. And the relationship back to the board, we always kind of stress to focus on that relationship as well. It's an important component of a comprehensive and integrated approach to wellness. You need to have your board on side or in fact leading the process with the support of leadership staff. And I also know from Mike that you are in fact a connected person and are thoughtful and caring, and your presentation today reflected that. So thank you again, Natalie. Any questions? Okay, hearing none, we will move on to Paul's presentation. So Paul Corrigan from Elk Island Catholic Schools, and we have taken a piece of the recording from the last summer conference that we had, and in which Paul presented. Now, Paul, do you want to intro that or just speak to it afterwards?
No, after is great. Yeah, thanks, Jim.
Awesome, Paul. So Claudine and Val, go ahead.
As you can see, in the area of wellness, we have what they call dials, I'm not sure, that measure our indicators. And again, this is a public-facing website, so all of our stakeholders are able to see this at all times. And it's live, so as we get data in, then those measures are updated. One can click on each of the areas we have in there to dig down into the data and get multi-year analysis of all the data as well.
I'll just add that on the top right-hand corner, you'll see site, EICS, and school year. We can go to each one of the schools and each one of the school years, and we can look at the data over time. And then the schools administrators work with their staff and their parent communities to also highlight where they are on the journey in each one of the goal areas, specifically wellness.
This has been, again, staff wellness has been one of our focal points for the last few years. And The public-facing data and staff wellness has been an ongoing conversation, I'll be frank, with our stakeholders and leadership group about what exactly should we be posting for the public to consume. And so there are some data measures that aren't on the public website as a result of that feedback and conversation. So obviously the school leaders have access to much deeper data than is on the public website as well.
Just to be more specific, for example, under staff health and wellness, this is where we track staff absenteeism. And in conversation with the ATA, local rep, as well as our administrators, we decided not to put that as public facing. However, if you dig deep into that quadrant, you'll see that there's the explanation of the measure. And as Paul alluded to, we have all the data, as well as the administrators have the data on each one of the staff members and their absenteeism.
So as you can tell, we're very excited about the assurance process, our assurance process in general. And I'm very excited specifically about the area of wellness and dealing with this, tackling this idea of measurement in the wellness area. As you can see in the area of wellness,
Oh, please don't make me watch myself twice. Am I up now, Val?
Yeah.
Val had asked me to just do a few comments after the video and maybe elaborate on some of the stuff we were doing. But I find myself in two difficult positions. One, my son spoke at a conference. I have a 17-year-old son. He spoke at a conference the other day, and I said to the people around me, "Oh, he did a really nice job talking, but he sure does move a lot."
In the area of wellness,
he sure does move a lot while he's speaking. And they all laughed at me and said, "You know where he gets that from, right?" And I'm like, "No, I have no idea." But now I was subjected to the video. And then the second part, I had the privilege of working with Natalie via the CAST mentorship program. But I'm a big fan of Star Wars. And as you'll see, the student, it'll be evident today, the student has become the master in the area of wellness. So well done, Natalie, in that regard. So tough act to follow. I just want to say, if anybody has any questions on anything I'm presenting at all, just throw them in the chat at any point. I'm happy. I much prefer the interactive. Just throw something out there and I'll respond to it right at the moment, so we can have a conversation about it. But what you see here is our assurance success measure dashboard that was alluded to or discussed in the video. And I think the link is in the notes as well. So you're welcome to go check it out as well. It's very difficult for me to begin a conversation about where our process is a real circle. And so I'm just going to be jumping you in at one point in the circle. And I apologize for that. So by the end of it, I hope you can see the whole circle. And I'm not sure what the best starting point is, but in January, we refine our goals, and wellness for the last 3 years has been one of our goals, thankfully. And we then look at primary strategies, and we ask schools to look at taking one of the primary strategies as part of their school assurance plan, which I'll get to in a moment. But so in the area of wellness this year, we only had 2 primary strategies. Either you're actioning the wellness administrative procedure, or you are engaging wellness teams in the division and schools to prioritize workplace wellness. And that is kind of a direct working with the CAST documentation, the playbook and whatnot that's come out. The first thing that happens with our assurance process is the survey in February. We do our own survey. It includes all the Alberta Ed questions, but it adds a number of questions in a number of areas, including wellness. So our own homegrown wellness questions, and we do a modification on the Q12 questions. And I noticed it's somewhat similar to Natalie's last slide, very similar questions there as well, that we can use year over year data to look at where we're at, how we're doing in the area of workplace wellness. So once that data comes back, and it comes back in March, then the schools, based on the overarching structure of the division plan that has been made, are then asked to engage their stakeholders in a significant way. And I'll in all the goals, but I'm speaking here today on the goal of wellness. So how are we doing in student, staff, and community wellness, and emphasizing personal well-being? Once they've engaged, they prepare a draft plan for their year that's going to include their professional development. One of the things that is absolutely essential in the area of wellness, and I think is becoming common, is that there has been this sense that, okay, well, if we want to support staff wellness, we'll just give them some time off. That's not research-based, it's not intentional, and it's not effective. If wellness needs to be seen like any other of our goals, our literacy goals, our numeracy goals, it needs to be research-based, it needs to be intentional, it needs to be ongoing, embedded in order for it to be effective. So the same standards are put in the area of wellness they are into any other of the goal areas in our division. And what we just finished in the last few weeks is we then meet with each of our 18 schools for a 1 hour kind of dig in. And we're looking at the data that you see here on the dashboard. We're looking at the survey results, and then we are hearing about what engagement they did. And if you want to, you can go ahead to the next slide. For us, a key consideration, especially when we're putting so much public facing data out there, is that our staff need to understand that data is just that. It's not a judgment. It is just the way it is. It's the snapshot of what's going on. And the important part is the conversation engagement with your community about how you move forward, whether that's staff for staff wellness, whether it's students for student wellness. This survey isn't the only thing. One of the things we're instituting specifically in the area of wellness is a temperature check. That's just a 3-question quick survey for staff, because in the last few years we have prioritized staff wellness kind of as a precondition to student wellness, as a precondition to community wellness. And we do that then at staff meetings throughout the year, take that temperature check of the community. And particularly, that's been particularly poignant during COVID with the ups and downs of what's going on. In the schools, we have created a connections team as well. I like that language. And that has included our chaplain, our family wellness worker, and our health champion, and our administration. And we were very intentional about this, specifically during the COVID year, about especially as people moved online and making sure people are remaining engaged and so on in their learning. But that connections team, so that it's not one person in each building who's given the responsibility of systemic wellness. There are a number of people in each building who can have expertise in various areas, who can be the go-to for wellness. And certainly administration has to be a part of that as well. If you want to go ahead to the next slide. So as you can see here, this is just one of the representations. If you dig down on our dashboard, in terms of, this is some of the questions that were somewhat modified, Q12 questions. Is there anyone from Gallup on this call? Anyway, and you see our year-over-year data. So somewhat proud of the fact that in the last, 1920 and 2021, we have seen significant impact of prioritizing staff wellness and systemic wellness in Elk Island Catholic schools. And as was mentioned in the video, some items are not publicized, and that is mostly to protect kind of staff integrity and whatnot. And we discussed that in the summer thing, so you saw it in the video. But there isn't really that many. I will correct myself on that one. There isn't that many that's not unpublished. If data the default should be that data is public facing, and there should only be the exceptions that are off what is public facing. And then the opportunity for administrators and communities to dig in and engage with their communities in the numbers and in this understanding in the area of wellness and the importance of wellness. That's where the real money is. I forgot to outline the process. After looking at this data and engaging their communities during that time, that's still in the spring, here now, we're asking the staff to complete their staff assurance development plans as well. So each staff member is asked to, teacher and support staff is asked to do a plan, and that plan needs to include a faith formation goal, and it needs to include a wellness goal. And just as a side note, as a Catholic board, one of the primary strategies in the faith formation area that they can choose from is connecting their faith and their wellness. So again, a kind of a push into this and trying to show the interconnectivity of the various goals as well. So each staff member will have completed by now, hopefully, their own plan, which then feeds the conversation back at the school level for what professional development is needed for the year. And once again, wellness is going to be treated like any other area for professional development. What kind of expertise do we need to get in? And how are we going to look at this as being an embedded, layered process throughout the course of the year to achieve the goals that we have set out for ourselves based on the divisional goals. Usually by now our schools, this is about our, I don't know, 5th year of doing this, we're starting to get okay at it, and the schools understand what they need to bring to the table when they're meeting with senior exec. And so this year there wasn't a tremendous amount of feedback for the schools in terms of, but what that is for us, that meeting, is to make sure that they're on the right path divisionally and that they have done a very good job of engaging their community in the conversations about the areas in which they want to grow in the next year. So divisional plan, school plan, individual staff plan, all feeding the understanding of what we're going to do and what activities are going to lead us to growth for the next year, supported kind of by the divisional structure on this. If you want to go ahead, Val. Yeah, and again, just kind of the survey results and being able to see, we're very blessed with a tech department that is able to really support us in putting together a lot of this stuff. However, I will say, if anybody, and I don't know where everyone's at with assurance, but if anybody wants support in terms of putting together a dashboard, we have a dashboard in a box that we can provide to any board that is interested in it. We work to create that just to support other boards who are moving towards the assurance process. Go ahead, Val. And there was it was Michigan State University, of which I'm not necessarily a fan, but nonetheless, I'll be a fan here, where when they designed the university, they put in the sidewalks last. They watched where the people went. And then a year later, where the paths were, then they put down the sidewalks. And for me, the administrative procedure has always been the sidewalks. Let's encourage people to walk a certain way. Let's get them walking a certain way, and then we'll lay down the sidewalks and tell them how this is how we always have done it here. So the administrative procedure is the lag item in our whole planning. And so we've been working on our wellness administrative procedure for the last 5 years, because it's all about the implementation. It's not that I can't write, although that may also be true. It's that it needs to be implemented before we write it on paper. Writing it on paper by itself isn't going to accomplish anything. We have 3 pillars, and we do use the 5 conditions from the CAS Workplace Wellness document as the kind of the foundation for our workplace, or for our wellness administrative procedure. So comprehensive and integrated approach, leadership, shared vision, evidence and research, roles and responsibilities, and systemic professional learning. And then within that, we have 3 pillars that we have focused on. So our first focus, which I would not recommend, was on nutrition. But if you want to create a stir in terms of wellness, give them a nutrition policy. It was fantastic. And we did that for a year, and then we moved to 2 years of mental health. And that's when we really became embedded in the work of Dr. Carrington as well in the Connections Network. And this last couple of years, we have been honing in on the idea of physical literacy. And next year, we will return to the pillar of nutrition, because the research on nutrition since we wrote that part of the administrative procedure has changed in terms of body understanding. And you have access, I believe, to our wellness AP. I wouldn't cut and paste anything from our nutrition section at this point, because it uses outdated language, to be honest. And we're partnering with the University of Calgary at looking at updating that. And next year, our newly minted wellness AP will be changed in the area of nutrition, because the research has changed and we need to change along with it. So that's what we'll be looking forward to moving forward next year. And one of the things I'm very proud of our wellness AP saying at the beginning is something that has become true in our division. And don't get me wrong. It doesn't mean we have it. It doesn't mean wellness is done in Elk Island Catholic. It doesn't even mean wellness is necessarily going well or well-being is going well in Elk Island Catholic. This is just our path. This is just the way we have decided to go about making it. The only thing I'm happy about is that it's seen by everybody as a priority. And in the Wellness AP, the statement that relationship is a precondition, a relationship and wellness is a precondition to learning, is an essential one that has come back and back and back again, and we need to be reminded about as we move forward with the work. And that was about all I had to say on the subject.
Excellent, Paul. Thank you very much. Just some great comments as always. And when we look at the connection between wellness and assurance that exists in Elk Island Catholic, there's certainly, a leader in the province in that respect, and in no small way due to Paul's great work. And also Paul was a member of our Wellness Advisory Committee over the last couple of years. And so thanks to Paul for that work. We had committee representatives from each zone in the province, and Paul was the Zone 6 representative. So thank you, Paul, for that. I like the connection back to the circle, completing the circle. And of course, that's often the part that can be left out. But when you have a comprehensive and integrated approach to wellness or connectivity or whatever the terminology is, certainly the circle will in the end be one that is complete and be closed, if you like. And also like the temperature check idea. That is, a pretty, because often, here's the AP, here's policy, here's the work, and then it kind of gets left alone. But the temperature check is a way to close that loop a little bit. So I like that one too. Thanks very much, Paul, again, for a great presentation, and thanks for allowing us to use your recorded session from last summer. Any questions for Paul from the group? Okay, none coming forward. So now we'll get an opportunity to move into the breakout sessions. And just a note that in your chat is the link back to the Workplace Wellness website and or the CAS website that has the Workplace Wellness components, which you'll need for the breakout sessions. Val, lead us into the breakouts.
Thanks, Jim, and many thanks, Natalie and Paul, for sharing your stories. Really appreciated your message, Paul, about how data is just data, but using the data to understand where continuous improvements can be made and how strategies can be adapted. You both mentioned that, so thank you very much. The worksheet that was shared with you previously was an attempt to gather different school authorities' ways that they are measuring based on the goals that they've set for their workplace wellness program, and that the strategies that are that they've decided to do for their jurisdiction. When we shared the worksheet with you, a couple of ideas. Again, the whole idea of this webinar is how will you know if your workplace wellness efforts are causing a positive impact? And the collection of what school authorities have done gives you an opportunity to look at what's happening in other places. When you get into your breakout rooms, depending on whether you're with your school jurisdiction or if you're with others, you may choose to review what strategies have been presented there or what success measures, or you may choose to jump into what you want to do in your own district based on having reviewed the document. So a little bit of an open plate for you in terms of your breakout rooms. Claudine will get us into the rooms. She'll put the link to the Google Doc into the chat. And if you wish to contribute to that, the focus going forward is to gather a lot of different strategies and measures and to see if we can compile some of those consistent ones across the province. Jim, is that okay in terms of directions?
Yep, that's great. Now, in terms of time, how much time do we have?
Let's go 15 minutes and we'll at least get the conversation going for everyone.
Okay, great. Thank you, Val. Claudine, off to the breakout rooms, and we'll see you back here in about 15 minutes. Thank you. Thank you for participating in our breakout sessions, and anxious to hear the feedback. And we'll start with Northern Gateway. Can you speak to us about how your breakout session went and what you accomplished?
Hi, Jim. Hi, Val. Hi, Brian.
Hi, Leslie.
We're very much in the very beginning of this, and we've had very little conversation around how we're coming together with this. As everybody's aware, we're into a lot of leadership change right now, and a lot of change in our division offices happening. So our conversation was around what are some of the things we are confident that we have as foundation for our start. And we have some foundational pieces, particularly our work with the quality learning environment piece, where we've established our foundation, our culture of wellness, around the research behind social well-being, physical well-being, and mental well-being. So that will start our conversations and will start us moving forward as we do put together a more comprehensive plan. We're looking at, and who's involved in this is we have staff, teachers involved with this mainly, right? And we've prepared teachers as our wellness facilitators at each of our schools. Now we want to expand that to all staff. So we're looking at starting some of our main work next year being around the collection of some data, and how, before we know what we want to measure, we want to get out there and not only do some survey type data, but some conversations and find out what's on everybody's mind and do a real thorough data collection, and then respond to that data through, as the year goes. Once we get to a place of, well, we know what our why is and what our vision is, then we'll look at putting together an advisory group that's going to move us forward in our next steps with our workplace wellness. So those are the things, particularly we're interested in expanding it into the voices of all staff, and looking at ways that we can get, superintendent advisory leadership voice, our division office voice from other people like transportation maintenance, and of course, all support staff in our schools. So that's kind of where we're at, and we're moving forward with that conversation and putting together those first steps so that I can actually have something to present to our new superintendent when he's in place.
Thank you, Leslie. And Brian and I have the privilege of doing some coaching and mentoring and support with Northern Gateway in their wellness journey. So thanks, Leslie. Group 9 or breakout room 9.
I guess I could speak to that.
Thanks, Christina.
You're welcome. So basically we talked about a few things. First thing is how do we know where to go, how to get there? Like, how do we know what we need to know? So we really did a good discussion in regards to the type of survey that we need to put out and who should be the stakeholders involved. And then we talked a little bit about social emotional learning, because that's such a new area for curriculum, and to explore that deeper. And Natalie had a good comment saying that the teachers need to be in the room, and this SEL component is being taught because they need to be invested. So they need to be brought into the why and being connected to it. So they, for example, if someone was to come in to do SEL with the students, that the teachers need to be involved. They're the big relationship piece. And then I believe we've talked about a few other things. Team, is there anything else that we need to discuss? Moving forward as a staff in mental wellness was another one. So we talked about, taking Brené Brown, how did that resonate with the staff, going with one way, so with one person. So really we talked about looking at the context of your division and looking at the needs from the survey and moving forward. For example, for work-life balance, a good one would be that ripple effect book, to do that as the wellness team. So to really kind of dive into what what is the need? How do you find that need? What is the need and how do we respond to that need? That was our discussion revolved around that.
Thank you, Christina. And Black Gold.
Hi, I'm John. I'm actually the division principal-elect that will be starting next year. And this has kind of fallen into my lap right now. We are at the very beginning stages, or I for sure am at the beginning stages of kind of understanding all of this. And so our current goal, or my current goal, I guess, is just to work with our 29 different schools to kind of review the current wellness practices that are in place in schools with the health champions, as well as our steering committee that Eric Larson has already set up. And then we're going to be looking into moving forward from that and kind of developing our plan. But we need to start right from the beginning of where our current state is. So that's kind of where we're at.
Great. Thank you, John. And just a reminder that we're certainly available to help out any coaching, mentoring, or support that may be needed. Brian and I are still working with Cass and happy to support you where needed.
Excellent.
You're welcome. Horizon.
Yeah, we spoke to just where we are at, as you noted from our last presentation last time. And we currently have different areas around wellness already. We offer PDs, but what we talked about is just doing more of that groundwork and establishing wellness with all staff consistently as the norm. We talked about just going back to establishing a committee with representatives of all staff throughout the division. Talked about identifying the domains of wellness and themes that we would be looking at addressing monthly, just to kind of tie it all in together. Establishing the why, like we heard already from a few people, and just creating that culture. So we have our monthly admin meetings, and the schools have monthly staff meetings, and just making it part of that culture, making it part of today. What's our wellness theme this month? What are we addressing? What are we looking at? So it just becomes the norm, like we talked about. And also looked at how are we going to collect that data, just have some accountability around what we're doing. And that kind of goes into when we're looking at the success and measures. So just looking at our quick surveys around what are people wanting to see. We currently do monthly PD themes for all staff and parents. So we hold those in the evenings, but just having more work around those wellness pieces and just have more voices when we look at the communities and in establishing that norm.
Thank you, Angela. And I love that connection back to the culture of the whole thing. So I mean, it's just one word, but man, it is very, very powerful when that actually happens as a part of the pull, not the push of wellness. So great work, great work. Just looking at the time, we have a couple of minutes available. The people that I've asked to provide feedback, I based on the Google Doc from the chat. Anyone else like to offer any feedback based on their group's work today? Okay. Thanks very much, all of you, for your participation in the breakout session. And the slide that is on your screen now just exemplifies all of the resources that are available to you on the CAS website. So feel free to, in fact, you're encouraged to dive into those. And I'm sure many of you have already, but this is just a bit of a reminder of that. And I'd like to ask Brian and then David for any closing comments that they may have, as this is our last of our 3 webinars. Brian.
Thanks, Jim. Just quickly, I think our playbook is going to need an appendix after today, and that might be the document that Val has put together that you've started on. Again, we all need a place to kind of get started and to help us move along in our journey, no matter where we are. I think most of all, I'd like to thank everyone for picking up the idea of workplace wellness as a priority. As you know, Jim and I are coming to the end of the project, sunsetting the project. We have about a month left or so. Jim has offered some support over the next month should you want any, even if it's just a simple conversation following up where you're at and some questions that you may have. I want to give you a bit of a heads up as well. I know survey-itis is a bit of an issue. Jim and I are hoping to distribute a very brief I think it's about 9-question survey, a simple Likert scale, as we try to get a handle on changes and impact, I guess, of the work that we've done over the last couple of years. That we're hoping that will go through the superintendents, and that each school authority would complete a survey as an organization. So a heads up about that. Thanks to Val and Claudine and David and Barry Latoon as well for the support of our work. I'm not so sure that there will be a chance for us to get together with you in the fall. Hopefully with the pandemic, things will lighten up a little bit, and certainly love to share a glass of wine or a beer with you perhaps, or a quick conversation, maybe in the fall if that can work out. But just a reminder that support specifically through us are winding up. And so you won't have too much time to take us up on the offer of support should you feel that you would like to follow up on that. We'd encourage you to do that over this next little while. So David, over to you.
Thank you, Brian. And certainly I do thank Brian and Jim for their ongoing work in bringing wellness to the forefront in the provincial scene. It really has and is, with increasing focus, becoming one of national appreciation for their work. And thanks to Claudine and Val for your ongoing support. Natalie and Paul did a fine presentation this morning. To borrow from Michael Fullen, I'd encourage them and anyone else here to continue to share your story, because as he would say, you get better at doing it when you express it to other people. And to also not lose sight of the idea that sometimes people, sadly, profoundly sadly, see this whole focus as a self-serving one. And what I liked about Natalie and Paul's presentation is, as part of the story, and of course there's a case for that, we want to be thriving people, live a long life for family and all the rest of it. But I saw in Natalie and Paul's story this idea of bringing to the forefront always that this makes a difference in the lives of the school community and ultimately to student learning outcomes. I passionately believe that you can, through time, show correlation to this work and the ability for teachers to thrive in their practice and students to feel good about their future and actually demonstrate that their learning results are improving. So I would never lose sight of that data set, because it's so critical to kind of convince our broader audience that this is not just something that's self-serving, it's just essential to the life of a school. So thank you, and I appreciate everybody's attendance. Wish you well in the conclusion of the school year.
Great, thank you, David. So we'll close off